All right, welcome back to the Pursuit of Progress, where we explore real estate, self-improvement, and how to get better every single day. I'm Ben, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Adam. Today, we're diving into something that completely changed the way you see opportunities, the Reticular Activating System, or RAS. Have you ever wondered why the moment you start thinking about buying a certain car, you suddenly see it everywhere? That's not luck. It's your brain working behind the scenes, filtering for you what matters. And if you learn how to control it, you can literally train your brain to find success, close more deals, and hit your biggest goals faster than ever. Stick around because by the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how to reprogram your RAS so you can start seeing the opportunities that have been right in front of you the whole time. Wow.
Got me pumped up with that intro, buddy.
Yeah. Well, welcome, Adam.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. This is a
You
fun one,
excited for
guys.
today?
I am. This is something I learned about a few years ago from a mentor, a guy that you and I both follow, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners also know of. It's Ed Milet. He didn't invent this, but he's somebody that is huge on this and is how I found out about it. And, I know this is a kind of a tongue twister, reticular activating system, RAS. We'll just use the RAS as much as possible today. But what this is it's also just an example of like manifestation, optimism, just really just being very intentional and mindful of certain ways to program your brain to being, again, more optimistic, seeing the opportunities out there, all that good stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and along those same lines, what I love about today's message and what we're going to be talking about is as you grow, you realize that the opportunities have always been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just weren't able to access them before. And I look back at my own life and I was like, you know what? Oh my gosh, like this was here or that opportunity was there the entire time, but I didn't have the ability to recognize it. And so that's what this system helps you do. It helps you recognize certain things, recognize the opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And I think the example that you shared just about the car that you really like and how you start to see that car everywhere afterwards, that's a really good, just easy example for everybody just to understand what we're talking about today. If you're just as an example for me personally, I had a Jeep Wrangler in high school, and all of a sudden I would just see all the other Jeep Wranglers all over the place. You're just so much like more fine tuned where it's not something that you're conscious of with your brain, but it's happening kind of in the back of your head without you even knowing about it. Just that, again, that ability to start recognizing and identifying things that maybe before weren't even on your radar.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Another thing that I recognize now is when I pull out every morning to take the kids to school, there's a stop sign, and it's not really that busy of a street, but it always seems like there's another car passing by as soon as I get to the stop sign. And it's not every time, but it feels like it's 80% of the time because I have now activated that specific scenario in my mind to where I have a heightened awareness about this particular area and this particular time of day for my personal life.
Yeah, those new Tesla trucks, just the real goofy looking
Yeah.
Tesla trucks. That's like another one where it's like I'm not like purposely like looking for them, but just like anytime there's one around me, it's just like I notice it, you know?
Yeah. You could probably do the same thing with dogs too. If
Oh, for
you're
sure.
a Labradoodle lover or a Corgi lover, it's like all of a sudden, like there's Corgis everywhere. But you ask somebody else and it's like, I've never seen a Corgi.
Yep. So without going too scientific on you guys, you're just explaining exactly what the reticular activating system is. So it's a bundle of nerves in your brainstem that act as a filter for information. It determines what gets your attention and what fades into the background. Your brain is constantly processing millions and millions of pieces of information. The reticular activating system is just making sure that you're only focusing on what's most important to you. So again, I could go down a rabbit hole and share a lot more scientific explanation, but I think that's just a good, simple to understand kind of overview of what we're talking about.
I'm a Christian and I read my Bible and I have a daily devotional. And one of the things I just recently came across, and I've known this lesson for a long time, but it just talks about how there is such power of life and death in the words that you speak. And I think that also goes with what you focus on as well. And it's so interesting that some of these ancient texts, how they may not explain it from a scientific perspective, but they have they explain it they explain these lessons through proverbs a lot of times, which is so fascinating and interesting.
And you guys, I'm sure have had friends over the years that fit into one of these two buckets. You have the friends that just seems like everything bad is always happening to them. They just can't catch a
Yeah.
break. Just thing after thing after thing just keeps happening to them. And I think I'll really focus on that word is happening to them. The opposite, though, you also probably have had friends where they just seem like they're on a winning streak. Man, they had a great job opportunity. Maybe they had a real estate investment that went really well. They just keep having wins in their life. And really the only difference between these two people, other than obviously hard work, and I don't want to just make that too, you know, of a blanket statement, but just really though, the biggest thing is that mindfulness, that reticular activating system part of their brain where they're seeing the opportunities or they're
Yeah.
seeing the wins that are out there versus just dwelling on the glass half empty, you know, this, I can't catch a break. All this is happening. Where you're going to start to see all the negative stuff all around you.
I read the 48 Laws of Power earlier this year, and the author Robert Greene, that's one of the things that he talks about is avoiding the unlucky. And not necessarily because they are unlucky, but because they have decided that is what they are focusing on. And when you focus on those things, it attracts more of that into your life.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the person that focuses on, and that's one thing for me, I don't know if I shared this with you, but I started a gratitude journal this year. And so the first thing I do before I start my workday every day is I just write down 4 to 5 things that I'm thankful for. And I feel like doing that. And now that I'm doing that every single day, I just feel so blessed. I feel just so thankful. And so, and I have 2 teenage kids right now. So, I got challenges and problems. But even despite that, like I was telling my counselor recently that, I have some challenges and problems in my life. But despite that, I just feel so tremendously blessed. And I think the biggest reason for that is because I have been more intentional and that's what I've been focused on.
Yeah, I mean, there's different, things out there that all follow that same principle where it's just focusing on the positive, not the negative. And I think everybody out here could always do a better job. I know I can. That's something I'm really trying to be intentional and working hard on this year. Just, always, being optimistic, seeing the glass half full. Just when you are truly authentically that way, not just putting on a show, you truly are acting in that way. I think it's without a doubt, you're going to have opportunities.
Yeah, there's that expression, fake it till you make it. And I have kind of reframed that with my own life where certain areas that I want to grow in, I visualize what does that version of Ben look like? How does he behave? How does he act? And I try and incorporate those themes into my life now. So instead of, faking it till I make it, I'm visualizing who I am, who I'm called to be, and I try and pull the future Ben into the present. Have you ever watched a movie and just thought to yourself like, I have tremendous respect for that character, or you know what, it's like I like that character's qualities, I want to incorporate some of that into my life.
So not the
Have you ever
actor,
been
but
in?
not the actor, but who they're
Yeah, just
playing.
yeah, just the not necessarily the actor, but the character who they're playing.
Yeah, I mean, almost every day I'm always trying to be more like Cole Trickle, Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise. Do you know him?
Okay, wow. Nicole Kidman.
That's part of it, maybe. I mean, that's a bonus.
But Days didn't they co-starred in that Days of Thunder, didn't
That's
they?
his love. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
NASCAR, man.
Don't even like NASCAR, but that movie, man, it's a good one.
It's funny. I'm not a big race car driver or race car fan either, but I started watching that Netflix show. I think it's called Drive or the F1,
Formula, yeah, F.
and just going behind the scenes and watching some of the stuff, even though I am not a Formula One fan, like wow, I got so hooked, and all of a sudden I'm checking like F1 standings. I'm following up in the season because you get so connected to these guys. when you watch the behind the scenes, like you discover and you learn how real they are. What I love watching about shows like that is that you get to go on the journey with these athletes and you get to see the tremendous amount of preparation and work and focus and I find that exhilarating. I find that very attractive.
Yeah, I really like full swing, same idea, but with golf. So
Mm.
let's just talk a little bit more about the reticular activating system and just how it works in everyday life. So I already shared that one example about, like me personally with my Jeep Wrangler or seeing those Tesla trucks. So, again, you decide to buy a Tesla, all of a sudden you're seeing Teslas everywhere. Or maybe you're a pregnant woman, all of a sudden now you're noticing all the other pregnant women that are out there. The biggest thing here is that it's not that there are more Teslas or there's more pregnant women. It's just that your reticular activating system is now tagging that information as relevant, and you're now more aware when that does come across your field of vision. Now, the same principle applies to goals. Just what you focus on is what expands and what grows. So I think that's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. And there's that other expression where it talks about how your thoughts create the reality of your life. And so if you want to improve your life, improve the quality of your thoughts and the things that you focus on, which is exactly what you're describing with the RAS.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll take a quick break for our sponsor segment of the week.
Yeah, we got our producer jumping in here, so we do got to take this break. This week's episode is brought to you by Adam Sells Denver because in 2025, real estate isn't just about buying and selling, it's about winning. Look, the market is shifting, interest rates are moving, and the people who get ahead are the ones who actually know how to play the game. And super exciting news, Adam Sells Denver is also partnering with me to co-host a brand new exclusive monthly live webinar, live masterclass webinar where we take you through everything from A to Z about the home buying process and the exact strategies you need to succeed and win 2025. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, seasoned investor, or just trying to make sense of this market, we break it all down in a way that's easy to understand and even easier to apply. To find out when the next webinar is happening, follow Adam Sells Denver on social or visit webinar.adamsellsdenver.com. All right, now let's get back to the show. And to clarify, yeah, really, really excited about that. Going to be doing webinars where we're talking about different real estate strategies. Adam is the founder of that. I'm blessed enough to get to participate, but really, really excited about that. And guess what? There are lots of opportunities in this market right now for buyers, sellers, and ways to make noise, ways to win the game.
You guys just think about what we were just talking about and apply that to real estate. Are you looking at the challenging market right now is negative and it's just everything's against you, or are you seeing it as opportunities? Because of some of these challenges, a lot of people are staying on the sidelines. This is giving you the ability to have an upper hand, a competitive advantage as a buyer because there's less competition right now. And you have more negotiating power with sellers also because of that. They've got less interest on the homes being sold because there's less buyers out there. So just really, again, looking at this reticular activating system concept and looking at the positives in
Yeah.
everything that you come across in life.
And that's when you separate yourself is during challenging times. When you look at a lot of these S&P 500 companies and the Fortune 500, a lot of them emerged during very difficult economies. I'm reading the House of Morgan right now, where it talks about JP Morgan and his history and how that evolved into modern banking. And some of the biggest blessings for the bank were during the darkest, toughest times because it gave them the ability to come rescue the market or rescue other banks. And so there's always opportunities in every market. And I think when I was younger, I've shared this story before, but back in 2008, when I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, when the market had just crashed, there were literally homes for sale on my block for $30,000. And at the time, I had a credit card that had like a $40,000 or $50,000 limit. I was like, I could literally go buy that home on my credit card, but I was afraid. But I was afraid, and I didn't do that. So exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, a lot of the most successful investors, real estate guys out there, they make all of their money, they make all of their best purchases at difficult
Yeah.
times, recessions, times when there's a lot of uncertainty, the more uncertainty in the market, as long as you have an educated basis behind what moves you're making, I mean, that is the best opportunity to make a lot of money because there's a
Yeah.
lot fewer people out there doing that.
And when you have interest rates that are kind of going up and down and values are changing and, economic growth is increasing and then it's receding, it creates arbitrage opportunities. And, follow Ray Dalio on social as well, because he talks about a lot of the arbitrage opportunities. And I've been educating myself on that. Always got to have that opportunity mindset. I just did my first flip
Awesome.
earlier this month, and it's a challenging, difficult market, but I did that in Oklahoma with my brother, but it was an opportunity.
It's great, man. Yeah, proud of you for that. I want to definitely do an episode where we dive a little deeper and maybe we can get your brother back on just to kind of talk through kind of like have like a master class just from kind of the start to finish on just how the different process worked and what some of the challenges you guys had and some of the successes. That'd be fun.
I would love that. He would love that too. And, we're on here talking about the reticular activating system, and it's like we just can't help ourselves. We go down that real estate path, and we just kind of keep going and going. We just can't help ourselves.
Well, let's keep moving on that note and just talk about how you can use this reticular activating system to your advantage. So, first off,
Yeah.
just that identity and belief shift. So, we've been talking about that already, just about that mindset shift that you're going to need to have if you're really embracing the RAS. So, your brain really seeks to prove what you believe about yourself. If you see yourself as a successful entrepreneur, your brain's going to start feeling like that and filtering for opportunities, not obstacles. The problem is that if you keep telling yourself, I'm bad at sales, your reticular activating system, again, is going to pick up on that. And it's going to start finding evidence to support that self-limiting negative belief you have. So it can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse. You really have to use this the correct way to get its advantages.
You got to make sure that you're focused on the right things and having the right attitude. When I have a problem that comes into my life, the first thing I do is I give thanks to God that this problem has entered my life. And I'm thankful for the problem because I know that this problem is not going to define me. And I know that it's going to be an opportunity for me to grow, for me to learn, for me to get a new experience, and ultimately persevere. And if you have that type of attitude with everything you can, we're talking about identity, beliefs, values, and then you combine that with the RAS. I mean, just think how powerful that is. It's like you're unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You're unstoppable.
So now let's talk about goal setting and just the daily programming that goes into maximizing this RAS. I said earlier about how I learned about this was from Ed Milet, and he talks just about how writing down these goals daily primes your RAS. And that's very similar to what Ben also shared about having like a gratitude journal. Just again, writing it down, there's something about that that just goes a little bit deeper into your mind and just makes your brain and your reticular activating system kind of latch on to that just a little bit more. So that's an important piece to this is not just thinking about it, but if you can, really just writing it down. And I'm horrible with handwriting, so I prefer typing. But with something like this, I think really just writing it physically with a pen and paper is the best.
Yeah, I'm actually doing some coaching right now with Dan Martell, and he is a student of Ed Milet's. Now, Ed charges like, $400,000 a year to work with him one on one. So I'm working with Dan, who's working with Ed. But that's one of the things that he does every day, and that's one of the things that Dan teaches his students is to not just write down your goals. I think, and this was the mistake that I was making, is that I had my goals written down, but I wasn't reviewing them every single day. And so what Dan suggests is that you have them in multiple different places around the house. So he has one in his bathroom, on his bathroom mirror. And then he also has one in the flap of his car. So when he gets in the driver's seat, he pulls his flap down and he sees his goals right there. He also has his goals in the background of his phone. So his screensaver is his goals. And because his goals are constantly in his atmosphere and in an environment, they're constantly top of mind. And so
That's awesome.
you kind of like, and that's what I wasn't doing in the past. And so now I've learned to do that. And there's other things that he suggests: showing your work. When you show your work, show others what you're doing every day on social. You are also showing yourself what you're doing, reaching out to others, exercising daily. All of these things work with the RAS on attracting others and opportunities into your life?
We did an episode almost a year ago all about how goals and really to really be effective, they need to be what's called SMART. I'm not going to go into depth on that, but one of the acronyms with SMART is S, which is be specific. And I think that's really also important is when you're having these morning goals that are kind of priming your day, don't just have it be something generic like I want to make more money. It really needs to be something that's specific and measurable, like, I will earn $10,000 in commissions this month. If you have a
Yeah.
KPI, a key performance indicator, some measurable, that's going to be making all the difference in the world. That's like the biggest first tip I can give anybody that hasn't at least implemented that into their goal setting and some of these different themes that we've been talking about.
Yeah, when you learn how to set goals correctly, I actually did this exercise with my daughter on her running, and Dan, he also has a coaching class on how to set goals and follow through with it correctly to where it's really, really powerful. And so what he does is, he believes in like long-term goals, not 1 year, not 5 year, but 25 years. For my daughter who's in high school, so what we did is, for her, we used, I want to do these things with my running career by the time that I graduate. And so she wrote down 5 things that she wanted to accomplish. And then what you're saying, we then broke down, what do I need to do daily, every single day, so I can make sure that these 5 things happen. And so, one thing that she would need to do is run every day. She would need to get enough sleep. She would need to have a nutritious diet. She would need to get her blood tested periodically to make sure that there's not any deficiencies with her blood work. She would also need to increase her mileage, do tempos, do track workouts during the season. So we outlined all of that. The next step was then identifying who are your resources. So who are the people that are going to support you? So she put me down as her accountability partner. She put Grace down as someone that's going to help encourage her and provide her meals. Her head track coach in cross country, Scott, is going to plan her workouts. Both of her dogs who go on all of her runs with her, her teammates. So when you look at it like that, like she has this tremendous community that's supporting her. The third thing was, or the fourth thing was identifying what your triggers are. What are things that you can relate to every day that are going to connect you with your goals? And so one of the ones that she wrote down was the dog leash, because every time she takes out that dog leash or the dogs even see it, they just go berserk because they love running so much. And so that was one. I'm looking at some of the medals that she's won in the past. That was another one. And then the final aspect is reward yourself along the way. So when you hit certain milestones or when you accomplish certain things, and it doesn't always have to be a result, or maybe you just ran 30 days in a row or you built out a new habit. Once you've done that, it's important to reward yourself along the way to make the journey more meaningful.
Love that. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's cool to see your daughter implementing that for a long enough period of time now where she's starting to actually see and reap the rewards of following such kind of a structured, specific set of goals and all that you had to reverse engineer to make it a success. I mean, that's awesome. So I think that's one of the
And
biggest gifts you can
when you
give your
do
kids.
that, you realize that you're not setting goals, you're scheduling goals.
Oh,
Mic drop.
mic drop. Woo.
You're not setting goals, you're scheduling goals. This is going to happen on this day. One of my favorite quotes is from Bill Walsh. He kind of talks about this same thing. It's in reference to champions. And what he says is that champions have to behave like champions before they become champions. They have a winning standard of performance before they become winners. And so you literally have to behave like a champion in order to become a champion. That might be common sense, but if you develop, so who's a champion? Who's a winner? Who's doing something right now at a high level that you want to do? Go look at them, go watch them, go see how they behave. And then when you behave like them long enough, you will become a champion.
It's common sense, yet it is something that very difficult to execute for a lot of people, myself included at times. It's one of those things.
Simple but hard, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about visualization and that mental rehearsal. And this is something that athletes do a lot. I think maybe this is something else that your daughter could start to implement, especially as she does track this spring, since I think track is even more of like a structured, kind of replicable activity as compared with cross country. But, Olympic athletes all the time are utilizing visualization and just understanding how they can visualize winning before they even step onto the field. And your brain really doesn't know the difference between real and vividly imagined success. People can really go down a deep rabbit hole on this. Ed Milet is somebody that I've talked about a lot, obviously, on this episode, but something else he talks about that really sets him apart, he attributes a lot of his success to, is how he's gotten really good, not at dreaming at night when you go to sleep, but he's great at dreaming during the day. And this just goes back to the same idea of a mental rehearsal, visualization, thinking very optimistically and positively. And with all of that, what comes across your way is going to reflect.
That's right. Coach Prime has that same philosophy as well. I'm a really big fan of his, and he talks about he doesn't dream at night. He dreams when he's awake. And it's, yeah, I mean, I think that we're taught to not. Have you ever had, for example, I just got this dream. It just kind of came to me where I want to start a show, start shooting content around my daughter on her running journey. And I got this dream to call it not the pursuit of progress, like this podcast, but in pursuit, because she's pursuing something. And it's so easy to write your dreams off. But then I thought about it. I was like, why not? It's like I'm learning how to shoot content better. I have an editor. I have the microphones. And it's like, you know what? I could do this. And then how awesome would that be to have this content 5, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, when she's a mom someday, and she can go back and like look at interviews with me and with her and her family and just watch this journey that she was on and have all of that documented. I mean, isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that's really cool. Hope you guys do that. She definitely deserves that. And she's still at an early stage, but I can just tell that she's going to go far. So it'd be cool to get as much of that documented as you could.
Yeah.
Alex Hormozi is another really big, I think, influence in my life recently, just very successful entrepreneur. And he's talked a lot about that, where like his 2 books that he's put out, as well as his podcast, all the content he does, his whole thing is he's going to become a billionaire, and he's like on his way to doing that. And he wants to be providing this journal for himself. The audience, myself, whoever else is, tuning in can also benefit from it, but he's doing it for himself first and foremost, and just really just documenting the entire journey as he gets to that point. I have no doubt that he will get there. I mean, and then last but not least, so we talked about visualization. The last one here is just auditing your inputs. And what I mean by this is, the people, the content, the environment that you're surrounding yourself with takes a huge toll on you and really influences what your reticular activating system is prioritizing. So again, the RAS, it's a muscle in the sense where you need to train it a certain way to get what you want out of it. So really making sure that the environment you're putting yourself in is as opportune as it can be for whatever it is you're trying to achieve. The people, the content you're around, what you're watching on TV, who you're listening to, if you have the news on all day, or if you're listening to podcast, whatever it may be, but just really understanding that the environment means a ton.
If you're someone that's trying to quit alcohol, but you got a 12-pack in the fridge, and every time you open the fridge, you see a 12-pack, how is that going to activate, or what's going to be the implication with your RAS? It's going to focus on that and what you can't have. And so that's why when you want to change behavior, you need to change your environment that's in line with your goals, values, and the person that you want to become.
All right, guys. Well, hopefully you got some value out of this. I know it's kind of a weird word, a weird acronym, but I think just, more than anything else, it's just an example of this bigger concept we've been trying to, talk about, which is just positivity, optimism, visualization, really having a ability to see the glass half full and see all the opportunities and positive things around you, as opposed to dwelling on negative stuff. Ben, if you want to close this out, the last thing I'll say before I pass it back to you is, if you guys want more info specifically on the RAS, Ed Milet has a great book. He's actually got 2 out at this point, but the one that he talks mostly about the RAS in is called The Power of One. So that's another great resource if you want to learn more about the reticular activating system.
The Power of One. All right, guys. Well, today we covered the reticular activating system, which is also your brain's built-in filter for success. We broke down how to train it through goal setting, visualization, and identity shifts so you can start spotting more opportunities in your business life.
And guys, if this episode gave even just one little insight that could help you win, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, subscribe, and don't forget, if you guys could, leave us a review. That really helps us grow the show. And if you're serious about learning how to just dominate in 2025, head over to webinar.adamsoulsdenver.com and sign up for our next free live masterclass webinar. Right now, we're hosting them every other week. So we've got another one coming up next week, and we'll hopefully keep with that same cadence. It's packed with a ton of game-changing insights that you guys won't hear anywhere else. Looking forward to hopefully seeing you guys on the next one. And from myself and Ben on the Pursuit of Progress podcast, we will see you next time. Let's get after it.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. 100,000 subscribers. Like, subscribe, share. 100,000.